dear friends. Welcome to the Hidden Reservoir Retreat, October 19, no, 20th, 2020, at the Sugar Plum Sangha in Ukiah. We are very happy today to welcome Brother Phap Luu from Deer Park Monastery in Southern California. There he is. So first maybe we can just invite a bell so we can all feeling a bit settled, and then I will do a bit of introduction to our brother. So dear Thầy, dear friends, I'm very happy today to introduce Brother Phap Luu. His English name is Brother Stream. He's been a monk for a long time, as long as I remember, since I joined the Wake Up movement maybe like 10 years ago, but he's been a monk long before that. The thing I really remember about Brother Phap Luu is that he is so kind and so supportive of young people, and in our ways of searching for a spiritual path and searching for mindfulness and ethics that we can follow in our life. And he has been very encouraging and been attending many of the wake up tours in Europe and across America. I think maybe Jonathan, were you on the same tour with him and Brother Phap Luu?
No, it's a different tour.
Oh, it's a different wake up tour, but he traveled to many universities and schools, and I read that Brother Phap Luu used to teach part-time in an inner city school, so I can also understand why he's really in touch with that side of how do we bring mindfulness into educations, into helping the next generations having a path of a spiritual path that's based on compassion and ethics. So I feel very lucky to be part of that recipients of that stream. I think that's when I was thinking of Brother Phap Luu's name. Phap Luu, as you can see, is Brother Stream, and which is fitting perfectly into our retreat that has that water theme in it, the hidden reservoir. But when I was thinking a little bit more about the name in Vietnamese, Luu is also has a, besides stream, it also has the meaning of preserving, of storing. So in some way I feel like he is such a keeper of memories. He has such a good memories about so many things that happens. Sometimes he mentioned things like, oh, I didn't remember that, but yeah, it was something really awesome that happened at Deer Park or at this one time. So I'm very grateful to hear all these stories that Brother Phap Luu tells, and that he really lives those moments so deeply that we able to rely on brothers to continually bringing that, nourishing that seeds of wholesomeness in us. So I think without further ado, I love to invite our brothers for up to the podium.
Dear respected Thai, dear friends, I don't know if I can see you. I can't see you, huh? Oh, there. That's a little bit better. Suddenly everyone disappeared and I just was looking at myself. Okay, well, I can see, I think, half of you at least, this view. So, dear friends, I'm in Deer Park Monastery right now, and I'm very happy to see so many of you coming together in this way, especially up at Mariposa, to see the community there. I haven't been there yet, but I've seen many pictures, and every time I see smiling faces and creative ways of living and practicing together. So hopefully someday when this situation passes, I can get up there to Mariposa and we can go for a hike together. It's actually something that I care very deeply about. Here in Deer Park, we are surrounded by wild nature, wild chaparral, Southern California chaparral. And I actually wanted somebody disabled screen sharing, but I came prepared with a friend. I wanted to share with you a friend that I just met before, just literally when I was walking up here from the meditation hall. I don't know. Am I allowed to share my screen, or is that illegal? Maybe it's something that's too difficult to do. I tried already, but it said.
Oh, yes, please share. We just enable the share screen option.
Oh, you did? Okay. Okay. So let me try. Let me see if I can do it now. Oh, yeah, it looks like it's gonna happen. Okay. In the code 844. Waiting with bated breath. Oh, there we go. Can you see?
Yes. Wow.
Wow.
This is our friend the Roadrunner
Wow.
that has been showing up very often now that we don't have many guests here in Deer Park. And he or she is hunting, if you don't notice. You see how it turns his head, he's looking up. Of course, he doesn't have the eyes in the same position like us, so he's got to kind of cock his head to. He's checking out, he's looking for a lizard up the wall. That's what I think. He's hunting, he or she.
Wow.
So don't think that it's so bad that you can't live in the time when there are dinosaurs, because this is a dinosaur. Anyway, that was just wanted to share that little encounter I had about 15 minutes ago. Okay. Yeah, so looking into our lives as monastics and seeing how being in nature can nourish and heal. I feel so grateful for Thay's way of sharing the practice. When we look at the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra, it says clearly that you can go to at the foot of a tree, an empty place, sit, establish mindfulness in front, and bring our attention to our breathing. And sometimes we usually focus just on the technique of sitting and breathing, but we forget the instruction of the Buddha to go to the foot of a tree, to go to an empty place. It would mean somewhere outside. That is part of our healing. I mean, that is the initial instruction, even before we get to mindful breathing. And so places like Mariposa, places like Deer Park, or places like our own backyard, or maybe we are in the city and all we have is maybe just a tree coming out of the sidewalk. But if we can go there sometime today and we can put our hand on the tree, if you want to hug it, that's okay too. You don't have to hug it if you feel uncomfortable, but you can just put your hand on the tree and just breathe with the tree. I don't have a living tree, but I have the wooden table under my right in front of me, and so when I look at the grain of the table, I feel actually, I'm not sure that it's actually real. I think it's I think it's a kind of, well, anyway, I don't know. I don't want to say that it's real or not real. It looks so real. No, I think it's the kind of thing. But anyway, this morning, Brother Look here was walking with us in the canyon stream trail. We have the trail down below, which a few of us, when I was a novice here in 2006, 2007, we were down in that valley exploring through the trees to see if we could find a trail that is already there. And of course, when you look at a first glance, there's no very clear trail. But I found when we looked more deeply and we kind of checked out the ground, we looked at the footing, it seemed like there was some kind of old trail that was there, but it had been grown over. This place at Deer Park, it started out with the Civilian Conservation Corps from the New Deal in the 30s. And so it was for those of you who might not know, that was a movement for to employ people during the Great Depression. And it came out of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration. And the idea was to, we didn't have much money, but if we touched the morale of people and we got them out doing things that they could learn to feel dignity in their life, even though they had very little money, they were very poor. And so then this center evolved into a Peace Corps center. So people were stationed here in the late 60s to go to places like Micronesia and Central America. And we found pictures online of Deer Park at that time. And although the buildings and some of the structures look more simple, although it's mainly the same buildings that we have now, but I'm struck in the photos of how similar the chaparral looks. It's just the nature is there. It's always growing, dying, being reborn. But somehow in that growing, being born, or being born, growing, and dying, there's a kind of regularity. There's a kind of cycle. And Buddha called it the cycle of samsara, the going around of things, impermanence. And when we walked in this canyon stream path this morning, I noticed some of the dead wood that we had cleared away so that the path could be open and people could walk through. And that dead wood is still laying exactly where I put it about 12, 13 years ago. And I think, wow, when I walk by it, I think, my goodness, that dead branch. I remember very clearly clearing that trail and putting that dead branch right there. I remember how it looked before the trail was completely cleared. Those of you, how many of you have been to Deer Park? Can you raise your hand? Okay. Yeah, you might know that where the Standing Buddha is in the Canyon Stream Trail. Anyone seen the Standing Buddha in the Canyon Stream Trail? Okay, yeah. So I remember the day I came on that, what I consider a kind of natural cathedral of nature, which is under an Engelmann oak tree, a native oak tree, or an oak tree endemic to this region. And I think the German guy, botanist named Engelmann, came by, and that's why it's called an Engelmann oak. It's strange to the native Kumeyaay people who lived here that we call it Engelmann, call it a German name. But anyhow, we came in this beautiful canopy of Engelmann oak, which is these kind of pale, flat leaves. So of course, there was no Standing Buddha there at that time. There was just a lot of dead wood that was hanging off the lower sections of the lower levels of the tree. And so I remember just reaching up and just pulling the dead branch down just slightly, and it would just gently break off. So as the tree is growing, it's putting out branches, and then those are superseded by other branches, and branches which grow up higher. And then those initial branches, which are so essential to the first years of life of that Engelmann oak, they just let themselves fall away into the earth and become, well, thanks to me, piles of dead branches just on the ground that the wood rats can make homes in. And now 12 years later, they are still there. It's such a dry climate. I grew up in Connecticut, and I'm used to a lot more dramatic change through the seasons, where dead dead branches fall and they rot very quickly within a few years. They're used by the fungi, by insects, by birds, by the rain, broken down into become the humus of the soil. But here in Deer Park, they stay for a long time. Things get preserved a long time. And so I was just appreciating that. I think, wow, where have I been in my past 12 years? Following Thai, living in the community, going back to Plum Village, going through the last few years of Thai's teaching with words, and then Thai's stroke, and then the past 4 or 5 years of our community learning to stand on its own 2 feet, to stand up there and where Thai stood and sometimes give a Dharma talk, and find ways especially to nourish our brotherhood and sisterhood. And that branch has been sitting there all that time. And do I think that what I've been doing is more important than what that branch is doing? What do you think? Yeah. According to our human experience, of course, it seems more important. It seems, wow, so many things have happened in 12 years, and yet that branch has not done anything less important, just lying there on the side of the trail. Even if it doesn't become the home for ants, even if it doesn't become a home for wood rats, even if it just lies there and it's kind of naked beauty, it is already enough. It is already doing something just as important as what I may have been doing in the past 12 years, and what maybe all of us may have been doing in the past 12 years. I just want to start with that story because oftentimes when we have the flames of anger coming up, it's because of we lose our sense of priority, or at least I lose my sense of priority. And so the Buddha, when he taught about the cycle of samsara, he was trying to help us. He's not saying that we have to be indifferent to the world. That's not that at all. But he's trying to help us get a sense of priority, to really help us to see what is truly most important. And Thai always reminded us that nothing is higher than brotherhood and sisterhood, or now we say siblinghood, maybe better. Nothing is higher than siblinghood. And so he protects our community by saying that, because we know that in many communities, in spiritual communities, we can get a little bit caught in our ideas about not only about the things that are wrong, but we get caught in ideas about the things that are right, that we think are right, like the dharma. What is the dharma? What is the correct way to teach the dharma? What is the correct way to practice the 5 mindfulness trainings? What is the correct way to practice 14 mindfulness trainings? Thai said it like that, but you say it like that. That's not correct. Things like that. This kind of thinking can, if we're not careful, it can invade our mind, and we lose our sense of a shared spiritual path, and we get caught in words. So I've been reflecting, listening to the topic, reservoir for cooling the flames, right? A hidden reservoir. special resources for cooling the flames. And reflecting on how and in what ways in our monastic community and also in the lay community and also in our I don't know if we're all where we're all coming from, if we're all in the United States or Canada. How many of us are living in the United States? Okay, anyone from Canada? No, I don't see everybody, but I don't see anyone raising their hand. Okay, so we're all here in the States. So this I kind of this is maybe some sort of community. I don't know. Recently, I saw a quote from one of our lay Dhamma teachers, Larry Ward, who you may know. He said, he called the United States a corporation trying to be a country. I don't know if that's somehow that resonated with me. So but maybe for the sake of just, we can call it a community of some sort for now. And then we have a larger world community, but that community includes not only human beings, but also roadrunners and Engelmann oaks and stink bugs like we have here in Deer Park, a little black bug that walks along and doesn't really care what anybody does. And horned lizards and all sorts of other bacteria that even the mosquitoes here. We recently had someone get the West Nile virus by our pond down below, which is a bit shocking. So they're all in. So the virus is also included in that community. And now we have a new member of our community, COVID or SARS-CoV-2. It's causing the COVID-19 pandemic. So we welcome you, SARS-CoV-2, to our human community. And we know until recently you've only been maybe in a pangolin or maybe a bat in China somewhere. And now you've entered our bloodstream. You've entered our human community, and with a big boom. And we are still learning how to welcome you and understand you. So these are like the levels of community that we are interconnected with, and I try to look and see how can I be a good sibling to all of the members of my community. And according to Thay's teaching, Thay's sense of priority, which is siblinghood is the highest. So if we are arguing about the Dhamma, we are arguing about what the Buddha said, we are arguing about what Thay said, then the invitation of Thay is to let go of our idea about what Thay said, let go of our idea about the Dhamma, let go of our idea about the 5 mindfulness trainings, and prioritize siblinghood. And that for me has been probably one of the best reservoirs of for cooling the flames in my own emotions, my own anger or sense of despair. When I really touch that brotherhood and sisterhood with the monastic community, with the lay community, with the horned lizards and the Engelmann oaks and the coyotes and even the mosquitoes and SARS-CoV-2. How can I leave the door open to accept all? Maybe, I don't know, can we have a sound of the bell before continuing? So as a young man, I can say that I suffered a lot, and especially when I went to even before I went to university, my parents went through a difficult divorce, separation, and eventually divorce. And then when I went to, for me, going to university was a place of refuge from that suffering at home. And I really took refuge in a place of knowledge and learning, because I didn't know how to handle my emotions around my parents' separation. And so even in between terms, I often like to stay at my university and just hang out there because it seemed more pleasant than going home. So I would just go into the library, or I would, go for maybe a hike for a week on the Appalachian Trail or something like that. And I remember how taking refuge in that way, I studied literature, so English, and so opening up my understanding to so many voices, so many experiences that were so different from this kind of white male growing up in suburban Connecticut, so that I can say at first it's kind of like feeling like, like a kind of deep despair, of realizing the enormity of the inheritance of the European Americans who are living on this continent, and not knowing how to handle that, and just wanting to, not knowing only that it made me very angry, maybe angry about my ancestors, maybe angry about what I observed in society. It made me angry with my friends who were going for corporate recruiting, signing up and getting jobs in big investment banks. Somehow I felt deeply somehow that there were things that I needed to understand, and the things about the life of the mind that I needed to go deeper into. And but I only knew how to fight against the machine, as it were, against the system. And I kind of left the country. I went to Europe and I worked a bit, and then got involved in a bunch of activist groups and a lot of protests and demonstrations, and got in a very intense relationship. When we decided to end that relationship and I came back to the States, I felt totally adrift. I said, I didn't know anymore. I felt actually a lot of hatred, a lot of anger in myself, and I directed it towards my government, our government. I directed it toward, but when I look more deeply, I see there were a lot of unresolved things, a lot of anger towards my father, the divorce, and a lot of also anger towards myself. And I didn't know a way out. And so these flames were burning inside of me. I wanted to reject everything, but there was nothing that I could accept. I didn't want to get a job. I didn't want to have a car and a house and a family and kids, and all the whole kind of climate catastrophe, in a nutshell. And so that was my state at about 23, 24 years old. I'm coming back to the US, and there were times when I didn't see a way out. I thought, I can't go on living like this. And I would go out and paint houses or mow lawns sometimes. And my mom was very kind. She let me stay with her. And I was very fortunate that someone had introduced me to Buddhism when I was in high school. And then along the way, I had met a few spiritual teachers. I didn't think of them as spiritual teachers, but they had showed me about how to follow my breathing. I couldn't really say I meditated yet, but somehow I started sitting down and following my breathing. I found a little yoga place nearby, and it's like what do you call it? Satipatthana or something like that. Kundalini yoga. And did some sitting meditation there, and I finally felt like there were people here who could understand what my story was, what I had gone through. in the past, as a young man, trying to, with all this anger and wanting to change the situation of our world. And then I discovered this amazing text, which is called the Four Establishments of Mindfulness. I don't know if you've read that text. Has everyone studied that text? I think it should be, if you really want to know Plum Village teaching deeply, then I highly recommend even memorizing it. If you're going to memorize one sutra, then memorize this one. And that's what I did at that time, because suddenly I found myself sitting down, going through these guided meditations provided by the Buddha about how to establish mindfulness in my body, in the body, not in my idea of the body, but directly experiencing the body in the body, feelings in the feelings. So not what I think I'm feeling, but actually looking, doing a scan right now. Maybe we can just sit where we are. If you want to close your eyes, become aware of your breathing. Be aware of the posture of your body. You don't need to change it, just be aware of it. Be aware of any feeling. It could be the contact of your legs with the ground, your backside. Maybe like here, it's a little bit warm in this room, so I'm aware of the sweat on my back. Or the position of my shoulders, whether there's some pain in my shoulders. It can be neutral feelings, pleasant feelings. Maybe there's a little bit of unpleasant feeling. Maybe we had something to eat for breakfast and we feel a little bit of pain in our intestines or stomach. And then we can bring our attention to our mind and really experience our mind in the mind itself. The mind producing thoughts. Is our mind anxious? Is it calm? Is it focused, dispersed? Notice how it changes. Time to time, you can bring your attention back to your breathing. We can become aware of the phenomenon of impermanence. Our body is always changing. Maybe our nails are a little bit longer than they were a few days ago. You can be aware of just the in-breath and the out-breath. Our chest is rising and falling. With each in-breath, the oxygen is transported through our heart to our limbs, to our muscles. We're always moving between waves of enough oxygen and then oxygen deprivation. Breathing in again, oxygen that flows through the bloodstream. Always impermanent. We can look at the nature of the phenomena in our body, in the phenomena themselves. We're like a scientist. We're observing in first person experience what is going on in our body, what is going on in our feelings. what is going on in our perceptions, in our mind. And we can touch the phenomenon of letting go, the dharma of letting go. Don't need to grasp onto anything. Don't have to remember anything. There's no exam, there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, no projects. We're just here together in this retreat, touching the infinite resource of letting go. There's no end to letting go. Being aware of the breathing coming in, going out. We can listen to the sound of the bell. Thank you so much for that moment of practice. Tai called his translation of the Four Establishments of Mindfulness transformation and healing. And I find that very evocative to see how mindfulness allows us to transform our suffering and heal. So maybe you experienced a little bit of healing just now. But that was exactly what I experienced as that young man at 24 who felt lost in life, wanted to reject everything. Suddenly I found there was a path. And so it's like when we were making the path down in the canyon here, and we looked under the Engelmann oak, and somehow it looked like footprints had been here before. Maybe even there was a dirt road. Maybe back when the Civilian Conservation Corps moved into this valley, they put a road up through, a little dirt road to run the length of the valley. There's an old, what do you call it, kind of drainage pipe that's there. And it looks like it's from maybe the 30s or the 40s. And I remember when I found that drainage pipe, I thought, oh, someone's been here before. I knew it. I knew that this was a path that had been trodden on before. And that was something very exceptional about the Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching. He didn't say that he invented the Dharma. He said, I've only discovered the path that is already there. And Tai wanted to emphasize this. That's why he called his story of the life of the Buddha, Old Path, White Clouds. This is an old path, and the Buddha has rediscovered it. And when I found, after, as a 24-year-old young man, that I was practicing almost like a fanatic at that point, the Four Establishments of Mindfulness. Every time I woke up in the morning, maybe 45 minutes, and then also 40 minutes before I went to bed at night, I decided that I'm going to put my whole heart into this because I've gone through so many things in my life. I've learned so many things in school. I've learned so many things in my life, living out of my backpack, going with activists, being an anarchist, demonstrator, I believe so many things. I've tried out so many things, but there's nothing I found like this practice. And the beauty of this practice is that I don't have to believe anything. What it's inviting me to do is look directly at what is going on in the present moment, in my body, in my feelings, in my mind, in my perceptions, in all phenomena. And that is the teaching. The teaching is there in the experience, in the lived experience. Of course, with guidance. And that guidance is like the Buddha has cleared the old path that is already there. When they asked Tai in 2014, should we teach mindfulness in the military? Tai invited in the 21-day retreat in Plum Village, he invited all of the lay Dhamma teachers that were present in the retreat to sit in the front row. I remember it was a Dhamma talk in Lower Hamlet. He's like, Tai's going to give a teaching in response to this question. Should we teach mindfulness in the military? The military is teaching mindfulness so that sharpshooters can shoot more sharply. They can have a better aim at who they want to shoot at, and they can keep calm in the moment when they need to attack. Is this an abuse of the teaching of mindfulness? That is kind of the subtext of the question. And Tai gave a very moving talk. Mindfulness is a path, not a tool. Mindfulness is a path, not a tool. Every step that we take in mindfulness is a realization of the path. The path manifests with our step. The path does not manifest because of where it goes. The path manifests with each step that we take, with each breath. And with each step, with each breath, we realize happiness. We realize awakening. We don't imagine some awakening that is somewhere else. And if we teach mindfulness in that way, if we practice mindfulness in that way, if we teach mindfulness in that way, then we don't need to worry about teaching mindfulness in the military. The problem is that we've made mindfulness into a tool. That is to reach, the tool is just to, not to enjoy using the tool, but to achieve some objective, which is to shoot more accurately, to keep our calm in a situation of where we are attacking or aggressive or in war. We think like that, and that is why we have that problem. So Tai said, we need to back up and look at what is our priority. Are we here? Are we instrumentalizing the Buddha's teaching, stripping it from its threefold kind of mindfulness, concentration, and insight, or which Tai transformed from virtue or precepts, concentration and insight? Are we just pulling the mindfulness out and leaving the rest behind? We need to ask ourselves that question as practitioners, as mindfulness teachers. Maybe some of you teach mindfulness. And I know as a monk, the temptation is often there because we feel good when we practice mindfulness and we think, wow, let's just scale it up, and we'll teach it. We'll make a system and we'll teach it, and it'll be a tool that people can use to do better. Students can do better on their exams, and engineers can do better at their software programming, and mothers can be better mothers, and fathers can be better fathers, and so everything becomes objectivized. We want to achieve an objective, and mindfulness is going to help us to get there. But I said, if we teach mindfulness like that, it's not the right mindfulness. It is something, but it is not a path. It's turning this quality of awareness into a kind of tool. And when we teach mindfulness as a path, when I walk along that path, clearing brush, every moment is a moment of revelation. Every moment I'm open and I don't know where the path is going to go. And so as a young 24-year-old man who felt lost, didn't know if he wanted to continue living anymore, I decided at that moment, I said, I hadn't heard Tai's teaching yet, but I had this sutra and I memorized it. And I just said, okay, I'm going to let go of all these objectives that I have set for myself in my life. Things that I want to do, things that I think about myself, things that I think about other people, things that I think about the world. I'm just going to let that go. And it's not like something you can do in one day, but I'm going to practice every day to just let go of what my expectations are of the world, what my expectations are of myself, what my expectations are of even practicing mindfulness. And just practice. Just get down to the practice of the dharma every day. Sitting, walking, lying down, standing, aware of my body, aware of my breathing, aware of my perceptions, and not let things get stuck. Notice when things are getting stuck. Usually when you get angry about something, there's something stuck. That is an indicator there's something stuck in your consciousness. And that is something that people can, if I say that, sometimes people get very angry. They say, anger is good. Anger motivates me. Well, motivates us to do what? We have to be very careful. Be very careful, because the emotion of anger can, it often, in my experience, comes from this kind of fight or flight response where we feel trapped and we don't know a way out. And so we immediately have to create a binary relationship. Me, and I need to protect my body. That's me. And then the other. We create the other. They. The system. And so immediately we create like our team, and then everybody else who is the enemy. And that is the nature of this kind of binary mind, which manifests when anger is present. And that's, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look for yourself when you become angry and see, what is it that I'm defending? And usually I find when I look deeply, there's some view there that's buried underneath my anger. There's a view, and I don't want to let go of that view. Usually the problem is that it's not that we don't want to let go of our view. The problem is that we think that by letting go of our view, we're accepting the other person's view. By letting go of my view, by default, I have to accept the other person's view. Why do we make that assumption? We make that assumption all the time, but somehow, can there be a space of not having a view? That's what I learned as I started to go into meditation practice. I learned to see, my whole life, people have been around me trying to inculcate me with views about things, about the world, about racism, about violence, about climate change, about many, many things. And I think those views are the right views. I'm quite convinced that I have the right views about all those things. So why am I so angry? Why am I suffering so much? That is a question. And that's something that I was asking myself very, very sincerely. I wanted to know, what is it that is, if I have all the right views, why do I still suffer? And so the Buddha was inviting me to go into the suffering directly, free from any views. So I look into the suffering, the actual experience of suffering, not my idea about it, but the actual experience, how it feels in my body, without holding on to any views, any ideas about that suffering, so that I can understand it. It's like when we look into the eyes of our loved one, we tend to have an image of our loved ones that is a kind of filter to the actual experience of seeing them in the present moment. So when we look at them, we just think, this person is like that, like that. We don't say it maybe verbally or think it verbally, but there are all these perceptions, an aggregate of perceptions about that person that we've accumulated over time. And the invitation that Thai offers to us is to look at our loved one with new eyes. Is he or she the same person that I saw even just 5 minutes ago? Is he or she the same person that I married, or that I gave birth to, or that I was born to, my mother, my father. And when we do that, when we don't have a view, when we let go of our perceptions about that person, then suddenly new possibilities open up. The path unfolds. The path that is already there becomes evident. Instead of just whacking your way through the bushes indiscriminately, trying to force a path where it doesn't want to be, we step back, we let go of our perceptions, and we look at what new possibilities could be there. What kind of assumptions, what kind of views have I made about this person based on the way they look, the color of their eyes, the way they talk, the kind of language they use? In what way has that brought me into a space of a self, holding on to an idea of a self of that person, holding on to an idea of a self about myself that is actually contributing to my suffering? And that if I'm able to kind of, in the language of phenomenology, bracket that calcified perception, and then look with new eyes at the situation, what's there? It's amazing. It's incredible. It's a wonder. It's like a living person, like a living, breathing person is in front of me, a miracle, a whole ecology of bacteria, of gut biome, of brain matter, of eyes, nose, is able to form. I mean, human beings, we have this incredibly dangerous airway, which is like right next to our esophagus, which makes us choke, but it also allows us to sing and to speak, to use our tongue. I mean, what a miracle. I mean, you can't say we're more evolved than our primate, like chimpanzee bonobo cousins, but they don't have so much trouble choking like we do, but we do have the capacity to speak and communicate with each other in extraordinary ways. Wow. Can I touch that wonder? It's like right in front of me is this wonder of a person, but I've reduced them to a series of perceptions in my brain, in my perceptions, in my thinking. And so that is the kind of thing that this establishing mindfulness helps me to do. It helps me to let go of those perceptions, let go of all of those views that I've accumulated about a situation, about a person, about myself, about the world, about the government, and go deep into this present moment. And that means that it's not so easy to take sides anymore. It's not so easy to declare the boundaries. It's not so easy to say this is black and that's white. Because suddenly our experience is wondrous. It has no side. It has no binary relationship. When we're free from fear, when we're free from anger, all these binary relationships between me and the other, or us and the other, just disappear. They're only superficial. Because if I'm not this body, how can I even talk about anyone else's body being something else, right? If I inter-am with the air, with the earth beneath my feet, with the water that I drink, the food that I eat, then how can I draw some kind of boundary between all of that interbeing and something else, which is other, which is my enemy, which is the ideology I want to destroy? So that takes some really deep courage to go on that path. And so what works for me is to take one step at a time. We shouldn't, as practitioners, get the idea that we need to be in a certain way, like be a mindfulness practitioner. That is a trap. When you're early on in our practice, we have to model the practice, right? Be mindful, sit up straight, back, shoulders relax, all these things, right? Be a proper mindfulness practitioner. And then when we do something wrong, we're very angry. Does anybody see me do that? You know, and we look around, and that is, you know, it's somewhat normal, but it's a little bit silly. Of course, everyone's smiling, so I hope you see that. But you see that because we've all been like that in some way, shape, or form. Even I, as an older brother, when I come here at Deer Park, I think, oh, I have to be an elder brother. I'm coming to Deer Park, and I have all these young American brothers. We're very fortunate. We have many young novices here in Deer Park now. And so I feel like, oh, I have to be an older brother. I have to do have fine manners, and all these things. But I know from the practice that that's not going to help me, and it's not going to help them. So if I just practice in every moment, that's already enough. And that means practicing also with when I trip, when I stub my toe, when I was out clearing some new trail up into the other day, and I came on a toyan, a tree. I think it's the namesake of Hollywood. So they call it Hollywood. So it's the red berries. It's kind of tree with long green leaves, and I've been clearing brush for a couple of days. This is when I was quarantined here, when I flew over from France about a little over a month ago. And so I had a lot of free time because I'm in quarantine. So I went up in the mountain every day and cleared some new trail. And I'd learned each plant has its own body feeling, and mostly it's clearing dead brush, but sometimes I'm clearing a branch or a little shrub. And so I kind of, with each, like there's the Artemisia, the California sagebrush, it has a special way of approaching it and how to gently allow it to move aside for the trail. That's a little bit different from the black sage, which is kind of like very brittle and so forth. But I was down in a little canyon where we actually still have a little spring of water, even after all these months without rain, trickling down, and all the bees are flying around to get a little bit of water there in this little crevice. And there's a big toyan tree, and it was right next to the trail. And so I was trying to clear some of the lower dead branches on the toyan, and I found out that toyan is a different kind of tree, and I didn't really understand the toyan and how to deal with it yet. And I had a machete, and so I was trying to cut the dead branches of the lower branches of the toyan, and they're very, very tough, and they're very like a spring. They have like a tough springiness, and so I was actually kind of whacking away at the dead branch, and I didn't realize that I was losing my mindfulness and getting a little bit tired, and I held up the machete and I stuck the point into my head. It was very funny. I mean, just a little bit, it just caused a little bit of like a lesion in my head. But I was standing there with this machete with the point in my scalp and just kind of like smiling. Like, this is a really absurd situation. I'm standing here with a machete, the point in my scalp. Like, this is a moment, this is a bell of mindfulness. I need to slow down what I'm doing and really understand this toyan tree, because clearly I don't understand it yet. But oftentimes that's what we do in our daily lives with our loved ones, in our conversations. It's like many times we're just standing there and we suddenly realize we've got our hand raised, we've got the machete in our hand, and we're sticking the point of it right into our own head. When we're really wanting to drop it down on the neck of our loved one. And so, that's okay. I don't get angry at it. That was a moment I used as an example of, like, I don't get angry at myself in that moment. I think this is just, I thought it was kind of funny, actually. Just remember that. Brother Phap Luu standing with the point of a machete in his own head. Anytime you do something and you get angry at yourself because you're unmindful, you just remember that image, and then I'm sure you'll laugh, and then you relax and you'll let go of your idea of what it means to be a mindfulness practitioner. Maybe we can listen to the sound of the bell. So this morning, did we read the 5 ways of putting an end to anger in the guided meditation, or no? We did. I see thumbs up. Okay. So there's a few more minutes left. So I wanted to just see how this beautiful sutra that's attributed to our elder brother Shariputra relates to this practice of letting go of our views of ourselves, of others. So there are these beautiful images. First one is of a monk who is going through a refuse pile. Maybe in modern times, if you ever have to bring your garbage to the dump, you can imagine a big dump pile. And I remember the one in the town next to me when I was a kid, and my mom would bring stuff there, and we go over and you see them going through the garbage, looking for things that could be reused. And so here the monk picks up a piece of cloth that is covered with mucus and excrement and urine and other filthy things. And it says using his left hand. You know, in India and in other parts of Asia, you use your different hands for different things, right? So the left hand is usually for cleaning yourself with water because you don't have toilet paper. And so you use that hand for in the tradition in that culture of that time for picking up things that are somehow defiled in some way. And so that's why it says using his left hand, he picks up the piece of cloth and takes the other end and stretches it out with his right hand. He observes that this piece of cloth is not torn and has not been stained by excrement, urine, sputum, or other kinds of filth. He folds it and puts it away to take home, wash, and sew into his patchwork robe. This is how, if we are wise, when someone's bodily actions are not kind, but his words are kind, we should not pay attention to his unkind bodily actions, but only be attentive to his kind words. So when we're caught in a view, when we're angry at somebody, we only pay attention to the exact opposite, to the things that piss us off about that person. And so it's like we're building a case in the Supreme Court of our brain, of our mind, against that person. And so that may end in an explosion of anger, or we just want to cut ourselves off from that person. So it's going very clearly not in the direction of building siblinghood. So when I have a brother or sister in the community and I see myself, that thinking going, how could she have done this? Then I know it's time to change the peg. Like in the old buildings, you have a peg that holds the wood together. And sometimes that peg gets rotten. So you can take a brand new peg and you can drive it in with a hammer. It drives out the old peg and you have the new peg already in place without compromising or risking the joint coming undone. And so Tai invited us, when we notice that happening in our thinking, we can change the peg right away. Just learn how to, and it doesn't take much effort. When you learn how to do it, just when you find yourself griping about somebody in your mind, just start thinking about all the wonderful things about that person. Think about the kind things that person has done to you. Of course, for sure there are kind things they have done. Right? Almost everyone we can find kind things about almost everyone. And just feed yourself that nutriment instead of the continuous griping about that person. And then you find that there's a cooling of the flames. You're not making stuff up. You're not trying to invent stuff. But you are trying to transform your mind's tendency to act like an animal that's backed in the corner and fight out against the enemy. At that time, all you want to do is preserve your life. So it's very obvious that you just want to be ready to fight. And so all that griping is giving you the ammunition you need in a time of battle. And the battle will happen if you continue like that. So if you want to cool down and actually see this person with a nuance, with more subtlety, that you have to see that there is something within all that excrement, all that sputum, all that urine, that is of value, that can be preserved. And if you see it, then the other person, you're going to help them to see it. Because it's not only, because we don't do it as an individual. When I notice those qualities in the other person, I'm actually, stimulating them to water those seeds in themselves. So those qualities become even stronger. One of my brothers was telling me about when he was living with his wife before he became a monk. Now his ex-wife, they're still friends, but and how she had tragically had a stroke when she was very young, and he cared for her, and when she couldn't continue working, and but she became because she was not able to go to work, she somehow became sometimes very jealous, and thinking that if he came home late from work, working too late, that he was out having dinner with another woman. And he wasn't. He was just working late, but he knew that if he came home, when he would work a little bit late, that she would yell at him and accuse him of seeing another woman. And so then he dreaded coming home, so he started working later. So he'd come home even later, so that she would be even more mad at him when he came home and more jealous of him. And to the point where he started saying, I'm going to go find, I'm not seeing another woman, but now I'm going to go find another woman to have dinner with, just because she kept watering that seed. So they are watering, you get in a situation where you're just amplifying the situation of conflict. And so, and that was before he was a practitioner. So he didn't know how to change the peg and just water the good seeds in his wife, so that the seed of jealousy, the seed of anger would calm down. And she also hadn't encountered the practice step. But now they are both practitioners, and they know how to water, how to change the peg, how to focus on only the kind parts of that person. The world is full of people who are not kind, but the world is also full of people who are kind. And often that's the same person. In fact, always it's the same person. So it's not like the world is like split with kind people and unkind people, but it's rather that the kind people are also the unkind people. And when you look at the world like that, then suddenly it makes a lot more sense. The next exercise, when someone's bodily actions are kind, but their words are not kind. The image is of a lake that is covered with algae and grass, and the water is very cool and we can drink it, but the surface is covered with scum, with algae, with all kinds of things. But if we know well how to practice to put an end to our anger, it is like going into the lake and clearing away the algae and the grass. And we can benefit from the cool water that is underneath. I remember a saying from the Cambodian monk Mahagosananda, when people would say, how do I not get angry when somebody's angry, yelling at me? And he said, just pretend that they are the birds singing. The problem is that you attribute meaning and perceptions in your own thinking to what they're saying. The problem is not what they're saying. The problem is in how you're perceiving it. But if you just change your way of perceiving, you can say, this is like the birds singing. So when somebody is very angry at you, you can just, oh, okay, something's going on. That's at first. Of course, you don't just, that's so you don't get caught up in the flames of the other person's anger. But once you're able to then not get caught in the perceptions that person is trying to stimulate in your own thinking, then you can see that person as someone who is suffering. And that is what the next exercise invites us to do. When somebody's bodily actions are not kind, whose words are not kind, and who's also the the third one is, but in whose heart there is something that could be called kindness. So in that case, we can't seem to see anything kind about this person, but we know that there is some kindness there. Maybe sometime in the past we've seen that kindness come out. And so the image is of a buffalo footprint filled with water. And whenever I hear this image, I think when I went hiking with with a few of my Dharma brothers in the northeast of Spain, Aragon, and it was very, very dry. And we found this little spring, and it was very, very, very little flow, but it had flowed into the footprints of the cattle that walk by the spring. And so we said, well, if I just bend down using my lips, not to disturb the water, and I drink. And so we did it just to try it, because we wanted to practice to what it really feels like to experience drinking the water straight from the hoof of the cattle's footprint. And we see that actually we could get enough water to cool to quench our thirst. And so we really look for those elements in that person that are kind. So you see in every part here, we're letting go of our view, letting go of our perceptions, the coarser, obvious perceptions of the anger of the other person or the unkind actions, and we're using our insight to pierce through, to find in that person something that's called kindness, because we know that if we're able to see it, then that can bring about transformation and healing for that person. And so the next exercise, the fourth one, is even more we can't see anything that can be called kindness in the heart of that person. Any kind of actions that are kind, any kind of speech. And yet we, like the story of the Good Samaritan, we find in our heart some compassion for that person. Somebody whose bodily actions are unkind, whose words are unkind, and in whose heart there's nothing that could be called kindness, is someone who's experiencing massive amounts of suffering. And there are people we can see like that in our society. And it's like they are in a hell realm. They can be in a position of immense power, but they're living in hell. And when we react when we react with anger, when we allow our flames the flames of that person to come up in ourselves, then we come right into the circle of hell with that person. And so this is where it takes a lot of practice, a lot of deep looking, a lot of insight to be able to have compassion for that person. This person has done me and so many others harm. And yet somehow, even though I can't see any kindness in that person's heart, I know that if I can touch compassion in my own heart, I can find a way to help this person. I can find a way to pick them up from the side of the road where they are suffering so greatly. And this has happened, I think, to all of us, where we felt like we were in a hell realm and somebody came and nothing that we said was kind, nothing that we said was, and it felt like in our heart there was nothing that could be called kindness, and yet somebody was willing to overcome that barrier we had set up between ourselves and other people. Some people are living in that realm of isolation. And if we are solid in our practice, we can come into that space. We can be a smiling human presence for them that is not going to allow their unkind actions, their unkind words, their unkind heart to sway our own mind. That is when we really, we get down deep in our practices, mindfulness practitioners. And when we're able to do that, then we are someone who has learned how to master our mind, master our own flames, cool them down, because we learned how to let go of a view. Even that person says things, racist, says that whatever, that climate change is hoax, whatever, whatever thing that challenge, those things challenge our most deeply held views. If we can be a human person, a real human presence, not caught in a view, not willing, not to allow ourselves to get angry with that person, that takes great courage. And that is a mark of a true practitioner. Like Tai said, a true practitioner is someone who knows how to generate a feeling of joy wherever they are, whenever they are. And so a moment like that is a chance for you is a litmus test for our practice. Yeah. And we may not succeed, we may get angry, but we know how to take care of our anger. And then next time we can come and see, can I generate compassion in this extraordinarily difficult situation with this abusive, difficult person? And we don't cede any of our dignity or sovereignty when we do that. We still keep our dignity intact. So that is the thing. Remember, the space, don't get caught in this binary thinking. If I let go of my view, that means I have to take their view. That's a lie. That's created by our fear and our anger. Move into the space of, I don't need to take any view. I can be just present, just aware of what is going on in the present moment. It makes, like for a child, it's very normal that you still live without a view. But for us as adults, our views are so entrenched that we think that we will die if we don't have any views about something, or people will think we're like some kind of monster because we define ourselves by our views about things. And that we have to be very careful, because that's a huge source of suffering. Nobody's requiring us to have any views. That was a big revelation I had at that time when I started practicing the Four Establishments of Mindfulness. And finally, the last one, which actually seems like it would be the easiest to practice, but sometimes we find ourselves caught in the situation where somebody who is so kind, whose words are kind, whose actions are kind, and in whose heart there is only kindness, and yet we get lost in jealousy towards that person. We say, why can't I be so kind? Why can't I be so compassionate? And we become angry and jealous towards that person, instead of bathing in the presence of someone who has a kind heart. The practice is not individual, it penetrates us. So when we come together like this in a retreat and we practice Dharma sharing, even if it's online, we're actually bathing in the presence of others whose words are kind, whose bodily actions are kind, and in whose heart there is something that could be called kindness. And so what we should do is take off our clothes and just go into the lake. Bathe in the lake in the presence of those who are kind. Assimilate those kind actions into your own ways of being, into your own ways of speaking, and your own ways of thinking. And it will be for your benefit and for those of others. And as long as you don't get caught in your idea of like, I'm like this, you're like that, but you see it in the eyes of non-self, it's very easy. And that's how we learn and we grow. And the trees are like that. So just to finish off with the Engelmann oak down in the valley of Deer Park, when I look at that oak, I love it because although its roots are intertwined, there are many trunks that are coming up. It's actually not just one tree. And each of the trunks is growing with the others. They are not trying to push out the others. They're not trying to, but they learn, they grow like a beautiful bouquet up from the earth, reaching up towards the sun. And this one reaches the sun here, and this one reaches the sun here. And that is why I believe the brothers decided to put the standing Buddha there, because they see the siblinghood of these trunks of Engelmann oaks, creating a kind of cathedral-like canopy over us. And we see that everywhere in the world. And that is our invitation for us as practitioners on the path together, to walk as brothers and sisters, as siblings. And when we see good qualities in each other, we can praise those qualities in the other person, even just silently, so that we know this is the kind of way I want to think. This is the way I want to act. This is the way I want to speak. And we don't give rise to anger anymore. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your practice. And I wish you a joyful retreat. I wish I could join in the retreat. This morning I was making video cables and Ethernet cables with the young brothers because we are planning our first online retreat from Deer Park in a few days. And so we're a little bit busy. Otherwise, I would have loved to join in and more on the retreat. But thank you so much for inviting me. Everyone at Mariposa and me and Jonathan, and thank you for your practice.
Dear Deity Sangha, dear Brother Phap Luu, thank you so much for the beautiful talks. We're very rejuvenated by your talks and how you water so many good seeds in us, and also to invite a deeper understanding of our suffering and our perceptions and in others. So I feel like there's a lot I absorbed and continue to sprout in the next part of the retreats and the next few days, and actually for the any time I practice the Four Establishments of Mindfulness. So I really am grateful to your sharing, and also very happy to know someone else also very clumsy in hitting your head or other things when we lose our mindfulness. um, so I think some of us might be getting clumsier as lunch arrives when we get hungry, and we need a bit more of the physical sustenance. So next we have we eating lunch together and recite the mindfulness at around 12:30. We will eat in silence for 15 minutes, and after that, we have about 15 minutes to kind of have slightly more informal socializing, just being together. Mm-hmm. And then after that, feel free to stay on if you want to, and the Sangha will take a leave to rest and also to prepare for the next activity, which is deep relaxations at 2 p.m. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you get a chance to prepare your lunch, even if it's simple, to nourish yourself and your body, and really taking in what let the Dharma rain that's already been kind of watering your seeds. See how that expressed in the way that you move your body and the way you prepare food, and the chewing and the enjoying of the food. And we see you again pretty soon, in about 20 minutes or so. Thank you. So let's invite Abel to stand up. One bow to each other. May the merits of our practice benefits all beings and bring peace.